sea monster, or World War I submarine? One of the most mysterious creature sightings in the history of the world involves a World War I German U-boat. So far as the story goes, it was attacked by a sea monster before being sunk by British patrol ships in the Irish Sea way back in 1918. The story says that some kind of sea monster, possibly a giant crocodile-type beast, attacked the vessel and forced it to surface. This resulted in it being sunk by the British. While it's obviously impossible to substantiate claims from 1918, it is a pretty remarkable story. It could have definitely been a marine animal that attacked the submarine, but the truth is that nobody knows for sure. The submarine has recently been found off the coast of Scotland by marine engineers, but it's still sitting at a depth of 340 feet, and there are no plans to retrieve it from the ocean. According to a marine archaeologist from Bournemouth University, the wreckage is in reasonably good shape even after 100 years submerged, but as of yet, nobody has found any evidence of teeth marks to suggest an animal attack. Still, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. Thylacine. The thylacine has been extinct for 80 years, but that has not stopped people from spotting the unusual creature. According to Australian officials, the thylacine, or Tasmanian tiger, has been spotted numerous times since the last known member of its kind perished at the Hobart Zoo in 1936. This has led people to wonder if the Tasmanian tiger ever really went extinct or merely went into hiding. Between 2016 and 2019, there have been at least 7 sightings of the Tasmanian tiger. According to a report from USA Today, the 8th sighting happened just recently. A witness described spotting a large cat-like creature the size of a fox near their home. The creature was allegedly not fluffy or hairy, and it had black stripes on the rear side of its body, just like a Tasmanian tiger. The big question here is, what does that mean for the animal? Could the Tasmanian tiger truly still exist? One man even claimed that he found a footprint while hiking up Sleeping Beauty Mountain that belonged to the animal. One family even captured some blurry video footage of a Tasmanian tiger strolling through their front yard. There is now very high hope in Tasmania that the long-lost thylacine is making an appearance after 80 years of extinction. If this turns out to be the case, it will be one of the first instances in animal history where a creature literally goes extinct and then crawls its way back from the dead. In the next decade or so, we could see the reemergence of this legendary beast. What do you think? Is the Tasmanian tiger extinct or just hiding? Let me know in the comments down below, then be sure to subscribe to Talltanic if you haven't already to stay up to date with the latest and greatest videos. Alien squid. Most people on Earth are familiar with the giant squid. Most people also believe the giant squid is the largest and most elusive of any squid species on Earth. And while it may be the longest, it's definitely not the most elusive. A new sighting of a mysterious creature is showing just how elusive deep-sea creatures can be. It all started when something that looked like a creature from a science fiction novel was spotted about 7,000 feet beneath the surface of the ocean in the Gulf of Mexico. It's known as the magnapina squid, and it is an absolute horror. The squid was spotted in rare video footage taken by the Shell Oil Company while trying to research offshore oil rigging. The squid was found lurking through the depths, looking like something out of your worst nightmare. Of course, the footage was caught by a remotely operated vehicle, as people tend not to go 7,000 feet below the surface. It's believed that the squid in the footage was at least 26 feet, 8 meters in length, with 10 long and skinny appendages. This is quite different from the usual squid, which has 8 long tentacles and 2 short arms. All the tentacles of this freak of nature appeared to be the same size. They're also held at right angles from the squid's body, making it look like it has elbows. Almost nothing is known about the magnapina squid. It's one of the only animal species on the planet that has never been captured. There has never been a physical specimen taken from this monstrosity, and it's been spotted only a handful of times. The Ebu Gogo. Indonesia is a land of many mysteries, but on the island of Flores in the east of Indonesia, there is more mystery than in the rest of the country, and a lot of it has to do with legends of a strange jungle-dwelling race of creatures known as the Ebu Gogo. Allegedly, the creatures were a race of hairy humanoids. Some people claim that they were the original inhabitants of the island and that they were wiped out by more advanced humans. Other people say that the Ebu Gogo eventually evolved into the Indonesian people who live on the island today. They allegedly only stood around 4 feet tall, 1.3 meters on average, and looked a lot more like apes than modern humans. They had long arms and round bellies, and they were fast runners and agile climbers. They were also supposedly ravenous gluttons who would eat literally anything, including humans from other villages. But were the Ebu Gogo real? The answer is not quite clear. They were apparently sighted during the 19th century by foreign explorers and new settlers on the island. The most recent sighting of a small and hairy man-like creature was in 2004 when a female specimen was allegedly captured in a village on the island. Unfortunately, the mysterious woman apparently escaped and then ran back into the forest, and nobody has seen another one since. What really makes this story come alive is the fact that archaeologists have discovered the bones of small humans dubbed hobbits that once lived on the island. It could very well be that the Ebu Gogo are still hiding out deep in the wilderness. Coelacanth. For all intents and purposes, the coelacanth is a dinosaur. It is the only surviving lungfish from the Devonian period, which was 410 to 355 million years ago. For most of modern times, coelacanths were thought to have gone extinct at the end of the Cretaceous period, around 70 million years ago. It was not until a trawler working off the coast of South Africa found one in 1938 that scientists realized the fish was still living. While it's extremely unclear how many are left in the wild, the coelacanth is definitely not extinct. In fact, it might be making a huge comeback. Scientists believe that the coelacanth lives inside of caves about 2,300 feet below the surface of the ocean, and that they are nocturnal animals that grow to be around 6 feet in length. After the first one was captured in 1938, the world went for 70 years before another one was found in 1998 by a marine biologist on his honeymoon in Indonesia. But he did not pull it out of the ocean. He discovered one for sale at a local fish market. That's definitely the last place you expect to spot a dinosaur. It actually turned out that there are two different breeds of coelacanth left on Earth, with the Indonesian version having split about 6 million years ago from the African version. The Enfield Horror. It's hard to say what's real and what's not when it comes to cryptids. Nonetheless, in 1970, something horrible allegedly stalked the small and quiet town of Enfield in Illinois. Illinois is already home to many strange phenomena such as thunderbirds and strange lights in the woods. But on April 25, 1973, a man named Henry McDaniel sighted something that would become known as the Enfield Horror. It all happened at 9:30 p.m. McDaniel had just returned home when his kids began telling him about something that had tried to get inside the house by scratching at the door. Shortly after this, Henry himself heard scratching from his front door. He expected to find a dog or cat trying to get in, but he instead found a creature with 3 legs, a short and mutated body, 2 small arms, and 2 large pink eyes as bright and as big as flashlights. The creature allegedly had flesh the color of a rotting corpse, and it was trying to get into his house. Henry apparently slammed the door shut and grabbed his pistol, then fired at the creature at least 4 times before it got away. This seems like something completely ridiculous out of a horror movie, but it was allegedly a real thing that happened. Apparently, state troopers even found scratches on the side of this guy's house. They were similar to a dog's, but they had 6 toes instead of 4. More sightings of the Enfield monster occurred afterward, but it was never captured or properly documented. Bigfoot. There has been an abundance of Bigfoot sightings over the year, and now that everyone has a phone that can take videos, there have been more and more video recordings of Bigfoot. But one of the most spectacular sightings came from traffic CCTV footage that caught a mysterious creature walking through a snowy field. The footage has blown people's socks off. The traffic cameras were located in Washington State, and it was actually the Washington State Department of Transportation that revealed the footage of the ape-like creature strolling casually through a snowfield. Could this really have been Bigfoot, or was it simply a really hairy man making his way back to his ATV? It's honestly difficult to say for sure, but Washington State is one of the Bigfoot sighting hotspots. This is also perhaps the clearest video ever uploaded of a Bigfoot monster, and it was even uploaded by a legitimate government operation. It's now being advised that all visitors to Washington parks should keep a lookout for any large hairy monsters prowling the snowy forests. Kansas City Sinkhole Monster. About 70 years ago, a young boy from a small Kansas town found a monster living in a lake. He allegedly fired 2 shots at the beast with his hunting rifle, only for the creature to disappear under the water. And this was how the legend of Sinkhole Sam came to be. To this day, people still believe there is a large sea monster living in a Kansas sinkhole. In fact, there have been several reports of a large creature that looks a lot like a snake swimming inside the Big Sinkhole, which is the official name of the sinkhole according to the Kansas State Department of Transportation. This body of water is located slightly northwest of Wichita, and there have been apparently sightings of the beast ever since 1952. While it might not be a legendary dragon that lives down there, locals are positive it's something. Unfortunately, it could actually just be a gopher snake. According to the president and executive director of the Center for North American Herpetology, the legend of the Kansas sinkhole monster is probably just a very large gopher snake that made its home near the water. The snake probably just so happened to scare the pants off a handful of locals who were unfortunate enough to meet it. Yoda in the woods. It's not every day you find Yoda lurking in your backyard. However, a woman managed to film a creature skulking just behind the tree line at her house in Minnesota. The creature looked almost like Yoda wearing beige robes, but it also could have been a woodland gargoyle. Whatever it was, the creature was certainly not normal. According to Stephanie Gibson, who recorded the unsettling footage herself, the creature was fixated on a group of deer in her yard, but would occasionally turn to look at her and then back at the deer. This is obviously not the behavior of a wild animal. Only something kind of human could act in such a way. In fact, you can hear the people screaming in the video while the creature turns its head to regard them. Unfortunately, the creature does not come out of the shaded area of the forest, and we never get a good look at it in the video. Some people claim it's just a cat, others say it's definitely a gargoyle, and of course some people claim it could be a curious extraterrestrial out for a stroll and observing the local life. Loch Ness Monster. When a tourist took a photo in 2020 at Loch Ness, he incidentally may have taken a photo of the famous monster itself. To the untrained eye, the photograph appears completely normal, but if you look close enough, you can see that the English tourist definitely caught what appears to be a very large fish monster with only part of its body revealed. While it might not actually be the Loch Ness Monster, the photographer did tell the local news that he had been prompted to take a picture because of some strange ripples in the water. He saw a strange fish appear at the surface and then go under the water. He pulled out his camera and by some miracle he captured a photograph of what could be Nessie's head. Of course, it could also just be a very large catfish, or it could be the legendary monster. If the photograph is indeed of an unidentified creature in the loch, it could easily be the clearest photograph of anything unexplainable inside Loch Ness. For those who firmly believe in the monster, you should keep in mind that during peak tourist season there are thousands of visitors every day snapping photographs, and this is the only one that appears to show anything related to a monster. But what does that mean? And is this indeed definitive proof of the Loch Ness Monster? From a terrifying hut full of mannequins to a mysterious coffin found at the burial site of King Richard III, and even a horrifying trail of doll heads that will make your hair stand on end. Here are 10 of the creepiest things ever found in the deep woods. Mannequin Horror Hut. Out of all the creepy things found in the woods, a horrifying hut occupied by spooky mannequins is right up there at the top. While a vlogger in the UK named Steve was checking out a rural patch of forest, he came across an extremely disturbing discovery. He found a makeshift hut built of scraps of wood and filled with mannequins, most of them covered in a red substance that closely resembled blood. According to Steve, nobody was home when he discovered the strange room in the middle of the forest, and he could not figure out what it had been used for. Inside, there were children's toys, random bathroom appliances strewn across the dirt floor, and even pictures of somebody's family. It was an extremely messed up place, and Steve simply could not understand it. And to make things even more bizarre, there were mannequins found outside the hut, leaning against trees as if put there to guard the creepy shack. And they too were soaked in a strange blood-like substance. Coffin within a coffin. It's one thing to find a coffin, but what about a coffin within a coffin? This strange archaeological artifact was unearthed at the final resting place of Richard III, deep in the English countryside. A team from the University of Leicester found the artifact while digging at the site where the medieval king was found back in September. They lifted the lid of the medieval stone coffin, expecting to find a body, but instead they were shocked to find a lead coffin inside of the stone coffin. They have yet to open up the second box, as the archaeologist believes that they should carry out extensive tests before opening it so that they don't damage whatever remains are inside. But they do believe that within the secondary coffin is a high-status burial. They simply don't know who it is yet. It could be an infamous 14th century knight named Mutton, or it could even be William of Nottingham, who died way back in 1330. For now, this mysterious coffin is being taken back to the university, where it can be properly studied and analyzed. Death in the Deep Woods. Moving forward to a more recent horror. This next story comes from the days of the global pandemic, when authorities from Vancouver Island discovered 3 bodies at a remote part of the Melrose Forest Service Road near the popular tourist destination of Koelacanth Beach. According to the Vancouver Island RCMP, more homeless people have been wandering deep into the forest because of the coronavirus pandemic, essentially turning the woods into an unofficial squatter zone. But because more of these people are wandering farther from society, they are having a harder time living. It's also a pretty lawless place out in the forest, which could account for the 3 bodies that were discovered, 2 of which were inside of a disgusting trailer that had been burned to a crisp. It's unclear what kind of madness went on to result in the deaths of these people, but it's safe to say it was nothing good. And now, who knows how many more corpses are out there in the unpopulated woods. Horrifying bug. A horrifying monster has recently been spotted in the forests of Bali, and it looks like it came straight out of an episode of Stranger Things. The creature, which has tentacles, way too many legs, and an oddly fuzzy body, was caught on camera crawling across the ceiling of a rural home in Bali during a storm. At first glance, the horrifying bug almost looks like a locust, with octopus tentacles slithering out of its backside. However, the creature is not actually a shadow monster. It's something known as a Creatonatus gangus, which is basically just a moth. It's a moth with a red or yellow body and 4 disgusting tentacles that apparently emerge when the insect is in the mood to mate. The tentacles are scent glands that expel horrifying pheromones, which work to attract female moths. It's undoubtedly the most horrifying bug on the planet, and let's hope it stays far away from civilization. Bigfoot creature. Speaking of horrifying creatures, there's nothing quite as creepy as discovering a massive Bigfoot monster stalking through the rural woods while you're trying to go for a leisurely hike. According to a report from The Sun, 2 hikers heard strange noises while taking a stroll at the Salt Fork State Park in Ohio. They thought it was just a wild animal at first until they came across what can only be described as a Sasquatch. The hikers even caught this creepy monster on film, with its big hairy body lumbering through the trees. And say what you want about people who upload Bigfoot videos to YouTube, but this one looks pretty legitimate. It's clearly not a bear, and unless it's a person in a gorilla suit, I would have to say that these hikers really did come across Bigfoot, and it's not that surprising considering the area. There have been over 36 sightings of Bigfoot reported in the exact same spot since the middle of the 80s. How exactly he has stayed hidden for so long is a total mystery. Alabama cemeteries. Alabama has to be one of the creepiest places in North America, and be prepared to take Alabama's creepiness to a whole new level. According to Alabama pioneers, there are cemeteries hidden throughout the forests and local communities of the great state of Alabama, many of them lost, overgrown, and utterly forgotten. There are also potter's fields hidden deep in the woods, which are cemeteries for those who could not afford to bury their loved ones in a proper graveyard. These are some seriously creepy places, and perhaps most notable is the Spanish flu pandemic cemetery near Birmingham, with most of its graves marked only by unnamed crosses. Basically, you need to be careful when wandering too deep into any Alabama woodland, as you're probably never very far from an old creepy graveyard. Missing skeleton. It's not every day that you find a skeleton sitting in the middle of the woods, but that's exactly what happened with an engineering crew who had been working in a wooded area in New Jersey. The workers were shocked to find the bones of an unidentified man directly exposed to the weather. The bones appeared to have been there for quite a long time, and after the police were called in and there was a bit of an investigation, the authorities discovered a pocket knife, a wristwatch, and a wallet with the man's ID in it. The skeleton ended up belonging to a man named William Schmidbauer, who had gone missing 11 years prior. This guy was a Vietnam veteran who went missing in September of 2007 after his wife woke up inside their home and found him vanished. His car was in the driveway and his money was still sitting on the counter. He had literally vanished into thin air. To this day, police have no idea what happened to William or how his skeleton ended up in the remote New Jersey woods. It's a baffling mystery. Who took William from his home, and who dumped his skeleton in the woods 11 years later? Doll's Head Trail. Everyone loves going for a good hike, but you have to be an exceptionally brave person to go on the hike through the Doll's Head Trail, probably the most terrifying pathway through the woods that you will ever come across. The trail is narrow, the woods are thick, and there are disembodied baby dolls everywhere. They may be set up as an art display, but it's still incredibly disturbing. There are all kinds of horrifying objects scattered throughout the forest, but most notable of all are the doll heads, many of which are placed beside the trail to freak out the visitors. This horrifying park is located near Atlanta, Georgia. It's something you should only go to if you have a high tolerance for horror. But this trail isn't all bad. If you look past the headless action figures, the random bowling pins, and the creepy decapitated doll head with the captain's hat, you can still enjoy the sights and sounds of nature. There's even a small public library deep within the wooded trail where you can sit down and read your favorite horror novel while surrounded by creepy dolls in an even creepier forest. Mummified koala. It's not clear where this next thing came from, but it's definitely creepy. It was allegedly found somewhere in Australia, and according to the experts, it's actually a mummified koala bear corpse. I know, it's extremely hard to believe when looking at an adorable koala bear and trying to compare it to this black and twisted monster. However, it could very well be true. After all, when you strip away the fur and cuteness from any animal, what you have underneath is a terrifying skeleton, stretched muscle, and exposed claws and bones. The only strange part about this mummified monster is that it appears to be sitting in the branches of a tree. It seems unrealistic because normally insects or other creatures would come along and help decompose the body. The only way to mummify something to this degree is usually by throwing it into a tar pit or leaving it on top of Mount Everest. The Aldridge Sawmill. Deep in the woods of Texas is perhaps the most disturbing and frightening abandoned place in all of North America. It's called the Aldridge Sawmill, and it began life early in the 1900s. The sawmill grew to be a massive production plant with employee housing, a blacksmith shop, and various other community buildings, including a small school. But in 1911, a fire destroyed much of the sawmill's original wooden buildings. They were replaced in 1912, but another fire in 1914 devastated the sawmill yet again. And if you can believe it, another fire in 1919 finally ended the Aldridge Sawmill and condemned it to death. 3 fires were too much to handle, and the entire business was scrapped and abandoned. Since then, the sawmill has been empty, but it has yet to be destroyed. You can still find this creepy remnant of the past untouched for 100 years. It's been overgrown, a couple of ghosts have moved in, and some unpleasant humans have marked a lot of it with graffiti, but it's still creepy, and it's still not somewhere you want to visit at night, especially without a ghost hunter with you.
Number 10. The Great Dane. Starting off our list today of the world's biggest dogs is the biggest dog breed on the planet. I am of course talking about the adorable and sometimes terrifying Great Dane. A lot of people don't know that the Great Dane is actually the official state dog of Pennsylvania. There is a portrait of William Penn and his very own Great Dane hanging in the governor's reception room as we speak. But as for the Great Dane itself, it is an absolute beast of an animal. They were used for hunting dogs and put in a lot of hard work. Because of their massive size, they could handle it. It just made sense that this breed would represent the state. As we move farther down the list, you will see that some of the biggest dogs to have ever lived are Great Danes. But where did these dogs come from? Despite being called Danes, the Great Dane isn't actually Danish. These dogs came from England. The giant dog breed has been described throughout history as noble, powerful, and dependable. These dogs are strong, intelligent, and insanely large. In the early days of frontier Pennsylvania, they were often used for hunting and working. They have long been considered the most loyal and devout dogs in all of Pennsylvania. Number 9. Zobra. Zobra is one of the most famous large dogs in the world. He's an English Mastiff that hails from the United Kingdom, and he even made it into the Guinness Book of World Records because of his massive size. Zobra was measured at 8 feet and 3 inches long, or 2.5 meters, from his nose to his tail. And at the time of his entry into the world records, he was 343 pounds, or 155 kilograms. Zobra weighed more than almost 2 average men combined. To this day, Zobra is the largest and longest dog ever to be recorded. Unfortunately, Zobra is deceased and no longer in the Book of World Records, but he still lives on in the hearts and souls of the people of England. Zobra had his time in the spotlight back in 1989, at the ripe old age of 8 years old. As an English Mastiff, it's no surprise that he was so incredibly large. These are some of the biggest dogs on the planet, hence why they're on our list. They are also known to be extremely loyal to only one or two members of their family. English Mastiffs are not the kind of dogs to spread around their affection. These dogs also have a great amount of courage and dignity, making them great for family. Do you know anyone with an English Mastiff? Number 8. Newfoundland Dog. One massive dog that you don't see very often is the Newfoundland Dog. As the name implies, the Newfoundland Dog is from Newfoundland. These massive pups were originally used as working dogs to help the fishermen pull their nets out of the ocean, but they have since evolved to be great family companions. Newfoundland dogs work extremely hard, they are sweet when it comes to their family, and they are very easy to train. But the Newfoundland Dog is not the type of animal you want to keep in your apartment. These dogs are absolutely huge. They can reach an exceptional weight of over 150 pounds or 68 kilograms, with a lifespan of up to 10 years. These adorable and hefty dogs need a considerable amount of space. So, if you're planning on having one, make sure your yard is big enough. According to Dog Time, the Newfoundland Dog can reach an outstanding height of nearly 2.5 feet or 30 inches at their shoulders. Their fur is oily and water resistant, which is great because they love to get wet. Their undercoat is quite dense and requires daily brushing. They can be white, brown, or black, or a mix of the colors. They almost look more like bear cubs than dogs. When you think of the term gentle giant, the Newfoundland Dog should really be the first to come to mind. Even though it's big enough to eat a wolf, the Newfoundland Dog is sweet with children, protective of its family, and very good with other pets. But if you have any plans of snuggling a Newfoundland Dog, you better make sure you have a big couch to do it on. Hey, real quick, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Give this video a like and hit that subscribe button for more videos like these. Number 7. Laika. Our next story is about a remarkable dog. It's a little sad, so if you're the kind of person that cries during the ASPCA commercials, you've been warned. Laika was not the largest dog in the world, but certainly the biggest and bravest dog to ever venture into space. Move over, Neil Armstrong, because Laika is really one who should be in the history books. Laika was a stray dog from the streets of Moscow, who was selected to leave Earth and travel among the stars. She went into orbit in 1957 with only a single meal and just 7 days of oxygen. Imagine the absolute horror this animal experienced while being launched into space. This is not a job for dogs, and yet Russia crammed this one into an overheated cabin and flicked it into space on a one-way mission. Still, Laika was the first living creature to be sent into orbit. According to the Smithsonian Magazine, Laika was a Husky Spitz mix. She met her doom when the Soviet spacecraft Sputnik 2 smashed into Earth's atmosphere over 60 years ago, engulfing the poor puppy in a fireball of death. Number 6. Irish Wolfhound. Moving back to planet Earth, let's check out the Irish Wolfhound. This is an extremely popular dog, and since it's on this list, also one of the biggest in the world. According to the American Kennel Club, the Irish Wolfhound can reach a height of around 3 feet or 36 inches, with a top weight of around 180 pounds or 81 kilograms. It's an extremely muscular hound that can run nearly as fast as a horse can gallop. Out of all the large dogs on our list, the Irish Wolfhound is definitely one of the most unique. They're not as vicious as some other guard dogs, and yet there is no better dog you want deterring intruders. The sight of the Irish Wolfhound is quite imposing, and yet, despite this, the hound is unusually patient with children and other small animals. And even though the Wolfhound isn't very heavy, It's often recognized as the tallest dog breed in the world on average. However, it's never been considered the largest because of its slim size. The Irish Wolfhound has a history going back to 391 AD. There's multiple references to these tall, beautiful canines in poetry in many different countries. Number 5. Hachiko. Hachiko is the only dog on the list today that has starred in a movie with Richard Gere. Well, Hachiko didn't actually star in the movie, but the movie was definitely based on him. In Japan, Hachiko is the biggest and most famous dog there is. He is a national hero to the Japanese people, and even has a bronze statue of himself next to the very busy Shibuya train station in the city of Tokyo. Hundreds of people take their photo with Hachiko every day, and there's even another statue of him in Rhode Island. He may not be as famous as Harambe the gorilla in the United States, but Hachiko is in fact larger than life. So, what's the story behind this beloved Akita dog? The story goes back to 1925, just 2 years after the puppy was born. Every single day, Hachiko would sit next to the exit at the Shibuya train station and wait for his owner to come home from work. But then one day, his owner never showed up. It turned out that the owner of the dog had died unexpectedly while at work. Hachiko the dog was adopted by a local gardener, and yet, for the next 10 years of his life, he returned to the Shibuya train station each and every afternoon at the exact same time that his owner used to arrive from work. Hachiko would sit for several hours waiting for his owner before returning back to his new home. He did this every single day for 10 years, with the most steadfast devotion imaginable. If you are not crying right now, what is wrong with you? Number 4. Freddy. Freddy the dog has a very interesting set of records. Not only was he labeled the tallest dog in the world, but he is now the oldest living Great Dane ever recorded. He recently celebrated his 8th birthday, at which point Guinness World Records confirmed that they have no record of any Great Dane older than him. Freddy lives in Norfolk in the United Kingdom, and he measures over 7 feet or 2.1 meters tall when standing on his back legs. But even for such a tall dog, Freddy is a real sweetheart. His best friend is actually the 7-year-old neighbor girl, who in 2020 helped Freddy to celebrate his birthday and his title as the oldest Great Dane in recorded history. But being such a big dog does have its price. For example, Freddy's food costs over $500 every month, with a diet that consists of kibble, beef, roast chicken, and a generous helping of treats. Number 3. Giant George. Giant George is yet another giant Great Dane who once held the record for being the world's tallest dog. But unlike Freddy, Giant George died just a month short of his 8th birthday. Giant George came from Tucson, Arizona, and was a beloved family pet. After George's death, his owners told Today.com that he was the outcast of his litter. He wasn't a runt, but the other dogs didn't seem to want to play with him. He was basically the Rudolph of his family. After being adopted, his parents decided that he needed a real human name because of his unique personality. They named him Giant George, and from then on, he was a respected member of the family. But like any big dog, Giant George caused some problems. One time, he managed to smash a hole in the drywall of his home simply by wagging his tail. Still, Giant George was a gentle giant and never hurt anyone, and was very good with the children. He held the Guinness Book record for being the tallest dog in the world between 2010 and 2012. Number 2. Saint Bernard. Most of us have seen the movie Beethoven, the story of the adorable and massive Saint Bernard that drools a lot and gets into trouble. That's just a movie, they're not all troublemakers. They do drool a lot though. Saint Bernards are huge. They have longer lifespans than Great Danes, but they are significantly shorter, standing only 2.5 feet or 30 inches at the shoulder. Still, these ancient working dogs can grow to be anywhere from 180 to 200 pounds or 90 kilograms maximum. They are absolute beasts. But perhaps the most fascinating part about the Saint Bernard is where the breed got the name. This dog once helped to save the lives of the monks living in the dangerous St. Bernard Pass, located in the Alps between Switzerland and Italy. The dogs were used for rescuing people after violent snowstorms. They were also used back in the conquest of Napoleon to rescue lost and wounded soldiers. But of course, that was many, many years ago. Today, St. Bernard dogs are amazing family companions that give huge amounts of affection to anyone they meet. And in addition to being huge, yes, the St. Bernard is also one of the drooliest dogs in the world. Number 1. Zeus. And finally, we come to the end of the line, to the tallest dog in the world ever. So far as records go, Zeus was the tallest dog to have ever stood on his hind legs. Before his tragic death a few years ago, he was recorded standing 7 feet and 4 inches on his hind legs. Zeus was a Great Dane, and he perished just before his 6th birthday. According to ABC News, his death did not only affect his loving family, but also the people in his community. This is because, even though Zeus got famous in 2013 after being named in the Guinness Book of Records as the tallest dog in the world, he was quite modest. Zeus spent much of his time as a therapy dog, visiting people at his local hospital and spreading cheer wherever he went. Zeus was huge, but he was also a sweetheart. He will be dearly missed by his friends, his family, and his generous community. Thanks for watching. Which of these giant puppers would you love to take home with you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to get all the latest and greatest content from the channel. See you next time.